What's up, everybody? You are very welcome along to tonight's stream. As you can see, I am joined by the fabulous Cash Boyle, and we're going to have a chat about all things football related. We're here to answer your questions if you've anything you want to chat about. Cash, how are you?
Good, thank you. Obviously, given everything that's going on, keeping busy with work, and looking forward to getting on and speaking with you tonight. So I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm interested to see how everybody is coping with scenarios in different ways. I'm trying to set myself small little daily goals and hoping, by the time this all blows over, that those little goals will add up to something a little bit bigger.
Yeah, no. Hopefully, I mean, it is a very it's a it's a very weird time. We're almost living in a perennial state of purgatory, if you like, where the days feel very long and yeah, I think everybody's looking forward to that point when, life returns to some degree of normality and particularly when football comes back. And yeah, it is a very strange time, but like you say, it's day by day.
You know what? I've been trying to think of the positives. I mean, I'm lucky enough I have a back garden, so on days like
Mm.
today, where the sun's shining, I'm able to sit out in my back garden. And I feel for people that perhaps live in a one bedroom apartment or don't have that space. So I'm fortunate.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it is the little things, I suppose. Like, and I have a garden of sorts. It needs a bit of a tidy up, but like just getting out and getting a bit of sun on your face and stuff it makes it feel a lot less restricting, I suppose, being indoors. And I think we all can agree that it's very important that we are indoors a lot at the moment. But it is nice to just get a wee bit of liberation, be it in your back garden or taking your dog for a walk or going on a wee cycle or whatever it is. But yeah, and it's very very odd. But like you say, find the positives.
I've been busting some moves around my gaff, I'm not going to lie. I've been breaking out the dance moves in the kitchen out of boredom and singing along and having some fun. And there's always positives to be had in any situation. And look, let's get to the football. The chat's starting to fill up. I will get to your questions, ladies and gents. Anything you want to chat about, please do put it in. Any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. But Cash, I wanted to start off tonight, mate, with the FA are facing some potential legal action already after declaring the season null and void for non-league clubs below the National League North and South. Now, this got me thinking, can you imagine the shit show that will happen if the Premier League or the Football League or any other major leagues around Europe did declare the seasons null and void? What this shit show from a legal perspective would be like if we're already seeing cases of non-league clubs talking about taking the FA to court.
Yeah, you're exactly. I just said yeah, really weirdly, but you are exactly right. I think, with all due respect to that level of football, it's clearly several levels below. Even the league football, let alone the Premier League and European elite level, and already there are pending legal actions against the FA. I actually listened to a really interesting podcast about this where the chairman of South Shields FC, who were like 14 points clear in their respective league, was on, and he was really angry about the decision. Not necessarily about the health reasons given, but about the fact that the decision, from what he had said, had basically been made without any real opportunity for the clubs in that league to make any representations. So it was almost taken out of their hands. And he was very angry about that, and understandably so. And what that demonstrated to me, and obviously the anger that it's caused, is you can't make a decision like that without consulting all the potentially affected parties, number one. And secondly, no matter what level of football you're at, there are ramifications for everyone. You might not consider it a very high level, it probably isn't. But this, South Shields FC, they were undeniably very likely to get promoted. And now that opportunity's been vanquished by a decision that was taken out of their hands. So if legal actions can be pending at that level, God knows what would happen at the higher level, which is why I think it won't happen, because I think the risk of that will be too great versus, the likelihood of them taking that action. I think the risk is too enormous to the game, so I don't think they will do it. But yeah, I think it's a really good contrast that you make, and it just does show that there are ramifications at every level for of the game, and people are invested and they're affected by decisions.
And of course, ladies and gentlemen, myself and Cash will be chatting here and dipping into the chat in the comment section as well. We'd love to know your thoughts on this. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen and heard what Cash has talked about there with South Shields and other clubs who are, there are some clubs I believe who are even unbeaten right down the lower tiers all the way through the season. And they're looking at a season being cancelled. And I have to say, Cash, I think it was very premature. I honestly do feel it was
Yeah.
very premature with nobody knowing what the future might hold. And for me, again, excuse my naivety in this entire situation, but I believe, from what I've read, it almost seems like it would be easier to cancel next season and finish off this season at a future date than it would be to just declare this season null and void.
I mean, it's hard to say in terms of, I suppose it's hard to say in terms of ease. I guess it would be very difficult to cancel next season. There's probably, there are probably things in place for next season, be it sponsorships, be it, partnerships with, different, sponsorship's the big thing that I'm thinking about. There'd be things in place for that. There'd be hospitality in place. There are so many things that make up a club's running of a season that are not just done on a season by season basis. So, of course, I think there will be ramifications if they were to cancel next season as well. But I do take the point that it may well be easier to consider doing that because nothing's been decided in that season. That season is a non-entity. Nothing has happened because it hasn't started yet. So you would remove the risk of clubs and teams and fans being angry at essentially the authorities playing God and deciding who wins and who loses and what happens because nothing in that season has been decided. So I think that would be good. It would remove that argument. What it would leave is a lot of administrative upheaval and potentially financial losses, but at least you would be able to rest assured with the fact that the authorities didn't essentially deprive you of your opportunity of a title or promotion or whatever it may be. So I do think that's a really, really good point. And to answer what you said as well, it is premature. It's very premature. I think there's a real impetus at the...
And Cash, I'm a man who knows about prematurity. Do you know what I mean? I'm a man that knows what it's like to be premature.
Were you like premature as a baby? I hope that's what you're talking about and not some sort of like crass joke.
Oh, it's absolutely a crass joke. 100%. I was a baby. I was too lazy to come out. I was like 2.5 weeks overdue. But no, it was just a crass joke because, I'm just trying to inject some form of humour. I know there's only one of us here who's a stand-up comedian and it ain't me, but I'll try my best, mate. I mean, Thomas McGee's dancing around his gaff to Westlife, so there is Thomas well in.
There is only one of us here in this particular conversation with the ability to prematurely do anything in that respect.
Oh well, you can fake it, mate. You know what I mean? You can fake it.
Oh goodness me, I wouldn't dream of doing such a thing. But
lies.
Oh goodness me. You can tell I've had like 1/2 glass of wine. But the
she's had a Baileys and she doesn't give a fuck, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh Jesus Christ! I've not had a baby. My goodness.
Baileys. Sorry, I said Baileys. I meant
Baileys. Baby. I was like, oh my goodness, I have not. Okay, so yeah, I mean, moving on from that, although it was funny. You're right in the sense that the decisions have been made very quickly, and I think it has been born out of the authorities, the powers that be, feeling under like intense pressure to do something or to be seen to be doing something decisive, because a lot of people are complaining about there being a bit of we'll suspend it to this date and then we'll look at it again and then we'll suspend it to this date. I think there's been a lot of clamour and call for clarity and a decisiveness, but actually the way in which they've been decisive hasn't actually been particularly effective, and it's made them look a bit silly. So I can see why they did it in a sense, but I also think they shouldn't have bowed to the pressure and they should have waited until, at the very least, until the 3 week lockdown period that's been outlined for the UK expires, because at that point then they will review it again. I think they should have waited till at least then, but they didn't. And what it sends out a message of is that your league is low enough down the pyramid and insignificant enough that we can do this, and that's it. And I just think it does send out a really, really bad message.
I agree. I'm going to read out a media release that was released by the Premier League and the FA and the likes in a couple of moments. I just want to get through some funny comments. And people might have seen me smiling, and I wasn't underplaying the seriousness of this situation, particularly for those non-league clubs, and League of Ireland clubs as well are in a pretty precarious situation right now. I was just laughing at some of the comments because Dave Sweeney said, Craig and Cash baby scandal. Somebody else said, what is there? She's had a Baileys and that caused the baby, said somebody else. So yeah, I'm just smiling because I'm trying to make light of some things, ladies and gents, because there's enough seriousness floating around. And I have Cash on, she's a good friend. I thought, let's have a bit of fun, why not? And let me just read you this statement. I don't know if you've seen this, Cash, but it was released today. So the Premier League, the EFL and the PFA met today and discussed the growing seriousness of the pandemic. I'm not even going to say their name because YouTube will put me in trouble. It was stressed that the thoughts of the three organisations continue to be with everybody affected. The Premier League, the EFL and the PFA agreed that the difficult decisions will have to be taken in order to mitigate the economic impact of the current suspension of professional football in England, and agreed to work together to arrive at a shared solution. The leagues will not recommence until April the 30th at the earliest. They will only do so when it's safe and conditions allow. Further meetings will take place next week with a view to formulating a joint plan to deal with the difficult circumstances facing the leagues, their clubs, players, staff and fans. And do you know what has shocked me, Cash? And I genuinely didn't see this coming. Leeds have apparently asked their players, or maybe there's just been a general consensus, but to defer their wages. Now that's a club that is right on the precipice of getting to the Premier League, a club who probably has fairly strong finances, and they're being forced into this decision.
I mean, from my understanding, and I'm not going to say that it's definitive, but I'm pretty sure the Leeds offer was voluntary. The players volunteered. It's at Birmingham that they've been asked to defer.
I think there's a few.
That's my understanding of it.
It is, and that's scary because you're talking about like championship clubs there, clubs who have probably decent television money. I mean, nowhere near Premier League money, but you can only imagine the knock-on effect down through the divisions.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Obviously they've released this. I suppose they've released this £50 million goodwill fund into the EFL. But as we spoke about the last time we had a conversation, that really doesn't touch the sides too much when you look at the amount of clubs that have to have a slice of it. And it is a massive concern. I think there's a couple of different elements. One is that we all know that a lot of these championship clubs, despite perhaps their prestige and how big a club they are, a lot of them, well, particularly lower down the league, but in the championship as well, run at a loss. They run at a considerable loss, and the whole idea is that their whole thrust is to get into the Premier League because the riches involved with that are seen as almost like a adequate compensation for taking such a gamble. So you look at it from that, you can imagine if you were to equate the championship in gambling terms, it's very like all on red, and in this situation blacks come out, because you have a situation where clubs very much, not all of them, but a few of them very much live under that sort of like boomer bust promotion chasing culture. And the reality is that when there isn't football, there isn't those income streams. Very quickly you realise that the clubs may not have the level of resource financially that you would have thought based on their size.
I seen Boya, our friend Anthony,
Yeah.
he's put into the chat that Leicester spent nearly 100 million last summer to push for top six this season, and it would be a real kick in the nuts for them if that 100 million amounted to nothing. And that's a fair comment. And do you know what's annoying me? I don't know if you've been reading Sky or any articles, and they say a source at club, a high level source at this club, or blah blah blah, and they come out and say that they feel that the season should be voided. This is where that annoys me. Like, if you're gonna say these things, have the balls to come out and say it in public. Have the balls to come out and say, look, my name is Craig Holden, and I believe that the Premier League should be voided. If that's your viewpoint, all this. You're a journalist, so you probably have a much greater understanding of this than a mere mortal like myself. But if you're going to have these views, I'm somebody that stands behind what I say and stands up and says what I say, and it is who I am. But to say that, it's snidey for people to hide behind. Like, at least Karen Brady came out and said her stupid comment in public.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all about perception, isn't it? Like, some people like Karen Brady aren't afraid to be perceived as an arsehole, whereas other people, want to perhaps not come across, not be seen to be the kind of person that would call for the season to be voided, but actually they are. And it's like you say, it's sly, and you should put your head above the parapet. And I'm always willing to listen to someone's viewpoint as long as they can justify it. So if someone were to say to me, I think the season should be voided, and give me a list of arguments as to why that don't involve, we don't want Liverpool to win the title, or I don't want my team to get relegated, then I'm totally willing to listen to those arguments. They probably have a basis to them. So, to my mind, and like you said, as a journalist, it is very frustrating when someone's like, oh, well, I want to tell you this really juicy thing, but I don't want to be named, because it just takes so much of the interest out of the story. But I think from a personal perspective, in terms of this, I just think that you need to be open and honest and admit that you have a particular view because of a particular vested interest. I think people would respect you a lot more if you were just honest about it. And just as an extension to what Boy said in the chat, I know that Leicester spent 100 million, but didn't they recoup like 80 million for Harry Maguire? So perhaps it wouldn't be that bad.
He's literally just said that in the chat as well, to be fair to him. He has said we did recoup 85 million.
So, by the way, so but good minds think alike.
There you go. We did speak the last time, Cash, about the fact that players' contracts run up until the 30th of June, particularly those like Adam Lallana whose contracts are out. And I did see something that came out in the Times. It's in a document seen by the Times, FIFA cites that the current situation is a force majeure, an unforeseen situation that prevents contracts from being fulfilled. That means that within the statutes of FIFA, their council have the power to introduce a set of emergency measures that would include a restriction on player movement until leagues are completed, even regarding transfers that have already been agreed. So, as an example, if Adam Lallana so wanted to, in January, he could have signed for Juventus, Sevilla, any club outside of England, and wouldn't have even had to inform Liverpool that it happened, because he is a free agent at the end of the summer and it was perfectly within his rights to do so. So, that is something that is going to be cropping up, these type of situations.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that it's good that there's been clarity on that and that it's a specific force majeure situation. I mean, you know, for people that obviously, well, not people would be aware, but it's like that's like any other regular contractual term. It can be enforced against you at any given time. It very rarely is, because situations like this very rarely happen. But in this instance, it would be. And I do think I really would hope, and I think that I really do think that most players wouldn't go down the route of trying to essentially profiteer or capitalize on this situation to still get their move at the time that they would ordinarily get it in any other given season. I don't think that would happen. I'd like to think not, but as I said, it does bring up an interesting contractual quirk, and it's good to have clarity on the fact that it will be enforced against. It will be potentially enforceable. If and when the season starts up again, and that would be good because it would give clubs the stability to continue on to the end of the season at its new date with the same personnel.
While we're talking about contracts and dates of specific contracts, I want to give a massive shout out and a well done to Nike, by the way, in this situation. So James Pearce posted earlier on, James Pearce, now of the Athletic, posted that a potential dispute has been avoided after Nike informed Liverpool that it's only right that they complete the 2019-2020 season in New Balance kits. And I have to say, Cash, look, there's two ways to look at this. You could be a little bit cynical and say, well, it's good publicity for Nike and it also stops any potential legal dispute that may cost them money. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because I believe that they sincerely tried to do the right thing here. And New Balance have invested a lot of money in Liverpool Football Club, 45 million this season. They've had record-breaking home shirts for the last 2 years. In my opinion, they put out some pretty nice clobber as well, some nice trainers and other bits and pieces. So it is lovely to see this. And I want to say a massive well done to Nike for doing the right thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think they have done the right thing, and perhaps I wouldn't say it's the only thing they could have done. They could have done many other things that would have been far more dickish, but I do think they've done the right thing. But, you know, I also think that we live in a world where you could both do the right thing, as Nike have done, but also enjoy the fact that it's given you positive publicity, which this will also have done. So it's, you know, it's almost like a selfish good deed. They've done the right thing, but they've gained something from it, and I think that's absolutely fine. That's acceptable. That's the world that we live in, and that's absolutely fine. And I appreciate what they've done. I think they've done the right thing, probably mostly for the right reasons, but they've also enjoyed a little bit of positive PR out of it. And, you know, I think everyone would agree that the right decision and the best decision has been reached.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, as you said, it's kind of a win-win situation where we all get to benefit from a good deed being done. And I say congratulations to Nike, and I look forward to seeing those New Balance kits lifting that Premier League title at the end of this season. All going well. Bit of an update, by the way. Thomas McGee wants to know, does anybody else like Westlife? And I have to say, Thomas, I do like a bit of cheesy music myself, Pat. How about you, Cash? Any, what did I say, Pat? I meant to say pal. You, Westlife fan? Any cheesy music? Any guilty pleasures?
You know what? When I was younger, my cousin loved Westlife, and I used to give her a bit of stick and say, "Oh, like I hate them. They're shite. They just sit on stools." And to be fair, when I was younger, I didn't like them, but I preferred S Club 7. But I actually now I do listen to World of Our Own more than I would like to admit. And I do enjoy a bit of Westlife. I have to be. I mean, you have to be in the right mood for it, but definitely one of Louis Walsh's more fine exports.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And I don't know, a lot of people might not know this, but there was a sixth member of Westlife at one point. It was Dickie Rock's son, but he got removed from the band before they went big.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you look back to, do you remember the first Late Late Show appearance? Or was that, maybe that was Boyzone? Maybe it was Boyzone, sorry. I think it was Boyzone.
That's interesting though. I didn't know that about Boyzone either, so you've still informed me with, you've given me new info regardless.
If you look back at their first Late Late Show appearance, I think he was in that actually. I think he was part of it. I remember they went down and just danced. I'm not sure if you remember it.
No, I don't, to be fair, it would have been perhaps a wee bit before my time. Not like the time I was born, but the time I would have been watching the Late Late Show.
There you go. Ladies and gents, feel free to let us know your guilty pleasures in the chat below or in the chat, live chat, whether that be musical or otherwise. And I want to give a shout out actually to Gavin from Hot Mic here, and I promise you I'm not going to ram Hot Mic down your necks, but Gavin told me to go and watch Tiger King over on Netflix. Cash, have you watched it or have you heard about it?
I've heard a couple of people saying really positive things about it, but I haven't watched it. What's the tea? What's it about?
I'm all in, mate. I'm not gonna lie. And now Sabrina and the kids are all in as well. It's about basically the exotic animal industry in America. And look, it's simplistic of me to say it's just about that because there's murder mysteries in it, there's fraud in it, there's a bit of everything, and there's a load of, unlike some other documentary type series, there's a load of actual footage of these events and not recreations. That's or cool. Just hearsay. Mate, it is so enthralling once you get into it. It's one of these things you will binge watch it, and I can't say enough good things about it. It is absolutely amazing. And I'm 5 episodes.
Tiger King.
Yeah, Tiger King. I'm 5 episodes in. There's 7 episodes. Each one's about 40 minutes long, give or take. And wow, this is just gripping stuff. It really is. It's class. Just when you think you're getting to grips with it, another character gets introduced or another crazy situation happens. It's mental.
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't in any way seen it, but you're selling it to me very strongly. But I haven't heard about it, to be fair.
Casper's guilty pleasure is The Big Bang Theory. That's not a guilty pleasure, mate. That's just a damn fine show. That's just a pretty damn good television show.
It's good, I have to say.
Right, so there was a little bit of news on the training ground as well, ladies and gentlemen. As I said to you the other day, everything was on track, but there has been a bit of a spanner inserted in the works. So it's believed that although everything was on track, McLaughlin and Harvey, who are the contractors, have had to halt work as of Wednesday, and this comes as a result of the government's safe distancing and self-isolation measures. And Cash, worst case scenario, the club might have to do one more year at Melwood before they move into that new facility at Kirby.
I mean, I find it hard to really be genuinely concerned about it because I've seen Melwood in the flesh and it's like an unbelievable facility. So obviously I'm not of the view that they shouldn't move or anything like that, but I just think that if this has to be put back for another year, we will cope.
Absolutely. And I always smile when I think about the new facility in Kirby, it being an absolute endorsement of Jurgen Klopp by the owners. I mean, it was his baby, it was his idea to bring everybody together under one facility like that, and even I believe to stagger a cash so players don't get straight access to all the first team functions and I suppose facilities, but they have to earn that right. But it does give Klopp the ability to keep an eye on what's going on, and I have this lovely vision in my head of Klopp all booting up and down on a golf cart in between the seniors and the juniors, keeping an eye on up and coming talents.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that, and I think it is, like you say, it's his baby, and it's a total, I suppose, epitome of everything he represents in terms of his coaching at the club so far, and it will hopefully leave a physical and an infrastructure like an infrastructure-based legacy after he does eventually leave, and I do really like all those elements to it. I think it's essential, when it happens. I mean, I personally still feel a little sting of sadness about the fact that they are leaving Melwood. I just think when you're out in Kirby, you don't just get fans that are standing over the fence watching. It is much more, I'd say, removed from any. It's not really in the city at all, whereas West Derby is very much in the city. And I think, as much as I understand it does take a little bit of that emotion out of the training ground and your scope to meet players and for them to sign autographs at their car windows. And, you even hear Trent Alexander-Arnold just to like stand over and watch them over the fence of his house. And I don't think we'll get stories like that anymore. And that is a bit of a shame. But from a footballing perspective, it's a really good thing. And when it happens, it'll be the right time.
Loads of things have happened since I last spoke to you, actually, and Reza has brought something up there in the chat. Have you seen this apparent gathering of 8, I think, of the top 10 Premier League clubs or something around that are writing with the same legal firm, writing to kind of oppose the ability of Manchester City perhaps to take part in next season's Champions League before their appeal is heard at the Court of Arbitration for Sport? So what's your take on that?
I mean, I think I'm in two minds. On one hand, I don't think I personally would feel strongly enough to write a letter, but I also do understand why clubs would, because I think where they went wrong with this was that they declared the ban at the wrong time. So if you have it in your mind that you're going to ban them for 2 years, I think the right thing to do was to wait until the conclusion of this year's competition, because ultimately, whatever happens in this year's competition, it'll be tainted. If they go out, then their ban, appeal will be heard, and they'll probably not be allowed in next year. Fine, but also if they go out, I think there'll be this air of, well, UEFA totally torpedoed our Champions League campaign by basically expelling us from the next one or the next two. But I think if they were to win the competition, it would be absolute anarchy. Like, you look at let's look at the reality. You're in Istanbul handing over the Champions League trophy. They're holding it aloft, being like, oh shit, we've got a 2-year ban. So it is, I think the decision was sort of announced at the wrong time. If you're so confident in your ability to ban them legitimately for 2 years, then do that when the competition is over and when there's no potential scope for foul play. And I think as a result, the clubs are right to say that if the ban is for 2 years, they shouldn't get to benefit until the appeal process is exhausted. I think the appeal process exists, and rightly so, but actually the club shouldn't get to just essentially use that and leverage it to continue to participate in the competition. Because in theory, what they could be thinking is, if we go down every possible route, if we try and twist every possible appeal avenue, we could get another year, maybe 2 years out of the Champions League, by which point we may have won one, we may have won two. Then we could maybe take a ban. So actually, I think it's right to say that they shouldn't be allowed to just use the appeal process to continue to participate in the competition. And if clubs really feel strongly that they shouldn't be allowed to do that, good on them, opposing it.
There was also, I can't remember what paper this came from, but there was also something to say that of all the clubs, Manchester City feel a little bit hurt or let down by the fact that Liverpool were part of this, because I think the whole precedence of it was that other clubs feel like Manchester City's involvement has taken away other clubs having the ability to perhaps grab that last Champions League spot over recent years. And there was one club who wasn't named, I think, who was more vocal in this. Again, somebody hiding behind anonymity there, but I don't see why they're a little bit disappointed with us. I mean, if anything, I think it's better that Liverpool are laying their cards on the table than being snidey or sly about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really... Anytime City try and play the sort of like, woe is me card, I just kind of laugh quite tritely to myself. I mean, in the sense that it sort of feels a bit hollow. Ultimately, their success is built on the money of, one of the richest families in the world that live and rule, a country in the world with one of the worst human rights records. We all know how their success has been entirely bought, not part bought, part manufactured, if we're being honest. We all know the fact that they have clearly broken the rules in pursuit of that success, despite having all the legal means to gain it. So when they sort of say, we feel really let down by Liverpool because they were part of this 8-strong party who wrote to oppose their continued participation in the Champions League, I'd say, well, why are you disappointed? Because the reality is you didn't play by the rules. Other clubs did. Other clubs are working to their absolute maximum within the legal confines of what they're allowed to do. They should be able to enjoy the fruits of their labour. You should not. And I really think that they shouldn't really be disappointed. And I also just think that when they say they're disappointed, I just laugh, because actually, like does anyone really like Man City or respect what they stand for? Because I don't.
Not a fucking chance. No, I couldn't be arsed with him at all. To be honest, somebody said there in
So
the chat they're irrelevant, and I just find them annoying.
yeah,
to
they
be
are
honest with
relevant.
you.
I actually think they're irrelevant. That's the funny thing. It's like it just makes me laugh. All this posturing and all this kind of like building and all this desperation for a platform, and like they genuinely remain irrelevant as a club. Like you can just tell that by their empty stadium. You can tell that by their non-committal manager. You can tell that by their absolute lack of any kind of history that people can bond with. And so it's like they're sitting there crying. It's like, well, no. I mean, it's not their game, and we all just adhere to their rules. The reality is, we all have the same rules to live under and operate under as clubs. They didn't comply, and now they are disappointed that other clubs are opposing that, and other clubs are making it clear that they don't condone that. And for me, that doesn't wash. And you just get back in your box. Like you're a mid-table Premier League team at a push that just happens to have been bought by someone who clearly wants to launder his money through your club.
As Keegan Murphy says with the perfect emoji in our chat, fuck him. As the great Dave Henry once said, Cash.
Fuck him.
Fuck him indeed. Look, there are some good news I suppose I want to get to in a second. And Reza, mate, you're playing a blinder in the chat there with some really good posts. Heads up though, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get to the sexy stuff soon, and not like the baby talk from earlier on. We're going to get to the transfer gossip. So if there's any rumours that you want us to chat about, or anything that you've seen that perhaps you think we might have missed out on, please do put it in the chat, because you know me, I do love a bit of a transfer. But to get to what Reza was saying, and I'm sure that you've seen this, Cash, young Ajax player Nouri, who woke up from a coma after being under for 2 years after cardiac arrest on the field. Have you seen this story?
Yeah, no, I saw. I mean, I didn't really follow the story when it first happened, but I read up on it when the news emerged that he had come out of he'd woken up from his coma, and what a lovely story that is. I mean,
absolutely beautiful to hear, isn't it? Like, I mean, he does have, I believe, some brain damage, but to be in a coma for that long, and to wake up, and he is communicating, I believe, which is beautiful to hear. And look, in what we're going through now, we'll take any little positive we can have, and it is beautiful to hear that gentleman has woke up after such a prolonged period of a coma.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's such a sort of feel good story. Mainly because I think my understanding of it was that there wasn't that much of an expectation that it would happen. There was a perhaps a bit of an understanding that he may never wake up and never recover, and it's clear that his life will be irrevocably different to what it would have been had this not happened. But the reality is, it looks like he's going to have a life to live, and that's a really, really positive thing.
I believe, if my memory serves me correct, I think he was only 21 at the time as well when it happened. Yeah,
no, I mean, you're talking about obviously the very serious and terrible things that are going on right now in the world, and they are many, and they are severe, but when something like that happens at such a young age, you'd be well within your rights to think, Jesus, like is anything, could I be any more unlucky? And the reality is, he has had something incredibly severe happen. His life will be totally different. He won't perhaps achieve all the dreams that he initially set out when he became a footballer, but he has a life to live, and he has family that I'm sure love him, and fans that want him to be well, and it's a really positive. It infuses me with a warm feeling.
Now, ladies and gents, I did say we're going to get on to transfer news, and the one that I want to kick it off with, so again, I'm looking for you guys to give me any more rumours that you've seen in the chat. The name, Cash, that I've seen doing the rounds in the last couple of days, and look, there's a lot of transfer speculation during this time. People are desperate for things to write, but Ferran Torres from Valencia is somebody who's been mentioned as a possible, maybe even a Timo Werner, not replacement, but other alternative option. Apparently he's got a release clause somewhere around the €80 million mark in his Valencia contract. Have you seen much of this kid? I have to say, I didn't know much about him until somebody brought him up to me I think maybe a month ago on a stream. One of our subscribers mentioned him, and Real Madrid looking at him, apparently Barcelona looking at him, but it is tough to know what's real and what's fake at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that. Like, I have to be honest, I only heard of this player. Well, you know what, I tell a lie. I'd heard of him, I think, briefly earlier on in the season in the Champions League when he was playing for Valencia. But I actually didn't hear about him in any kind of real sense until I read that rumour, and obviously the headlines were all, oh, Liverpool after Torres, not that one, and all this. And, I looked at a couple of highlights, does look a very good player, no doubt about it. But I think it would be, if you saw, I don't know if anybody saw in the chat, but Jurgen Klopp released a video yesterday along with all the players thanking all the health workers, and Jurgen Klopp released a longer video or a longer statement talking about, the impact the whole situation has had on him from the perspective of watching the NHS in England and, across the UK working so hard. And I could tell from that he's not really thinking about football. Like, yeah, I can tell that, it's one of those things where I think Jurgen Klopp is not just like football obsessed, to the point that he isn't affected by human matters. I think he's probably more affected by human matters than most. And so I would say that, yeah, the scouting department may be looking and planning for the future. All clubs do that, particularly during this time, that there's a sort of an unexpected break. But I actually think Klopp and the club aren't really thinking about that too much at the moment, I would say. But it would be interesting to see how it develops.
What I would say is, yesterday I seen in the UK, I think it was 8 p.m, everybody was clapping for the NHS workers and stuff, yes. And something similar was happening here in Ireland. And let me just say, first and foremost, those guys are heroes. I've said this time and time again, but there are a lot of fucking hypocrites out there that are out there clapping, banging pots and making all the right noises, and then the next day are going out walking around in parks, listening to music, playing football. If you want to help the NHS and you want to help the country and you want to help over here in Ireland, if you want to help the HSE, just stay indoors. Keep you going outside to an absolute minimum. Please adhere to the social distancing and all the information that we're being given. But don't be a hypocrite during this time. I mean, don't, everybody knows how to posture cash. Everybody knows how to look like they're doing and saying the right things. But doing the right thing now, like here in Ireland, just before I came on at 8:30, Leo Varadkar, or the government addressed the nation, and they said that from midnight tonight there was a real 2-week lockdown in Ireland. You can't go outside a 2-kilometre distance of your house. The police are going to be patrolling the streets a bit more, I believe. The elderly over 70 are being cocooned and they're almost being told, do not leave your house for any reason whatsoever. And look, this might sound like, breaking news to a lot of people, but it's something that most of us have been doing anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I don't really get anyone who wouldn't comply with the rules. And I get your point in terms of like the hypocrisy of some people. I think maybe more in Ireland it's the hypocrisy of people clapping the NHS, well, the healthcare services and the care services, but then, putting them under pressure by not complying with the guidance and the instructions that they've been given in terms of staying at home. I think more so here in London and England generally, the hypocrisy arises from the fact that you've got people out clapping the NHS who vote for the Conservative Party. Like, that totally gets on my wick, because, the reality is that you're sitting there clapping for a service that's only under the pressure it's under because of the political leadership that's made it put it under that pressure. So it is a bit ridiculous. But I do think gestures like the clapping thing have a lot of meaning for the people who do them earnestly, have a lot of meaning for the people who do them for the right reasons, who aren't hypocritical, who don't just do it to posture. I think there's something very nice about that level of unity, and it's undeniably required at the moment because of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, heroes, each and every one, supermarket workers, van drivers. There's so many people out there that are on the front line, that are doing the hard yards, that deserve all our love and respect.
Yes.
But I just, as I'm saying, just don't be a hypocrite. Do you know what I mean? If you genuinely care, and I think most people deep down do care, just do the right thing. If we do the hard yards now, Cash, hopefully, if each one of us just think of every single life that could potentially be saved by one person, not personal. A lot of us can be asymptomatic as well. And I don't want to get into the details of this, because I certainly am not qualified to talk about it. But all I'm trying to say is just, think of every elderly person like your own grandmother or grandfather. And I've seen reports of people going up and coughing in people's faces and stuff like that.
Yeah, they made that a criminal offence here, actually. They passed legislation to make it a criminal offence, which is good, but also terrifying that you've got to do that so people don't cough in people's faces. But, it's like you say, you're not qualified to talk about the medical element, but you are qualified to talk about, people just doing the right thing and not being wankers. And, I don't even think that you necessarily have to think about your own grandmother or an elderly person that you know. Just think decently and compassionately like a regular human being, and do what a good human being would do, which is not to risk anybody else's health just because you're young and in good health.
Just don't be a cunt. That's basically what this boils down to.
In
Yeah.
summary, yes.
Common sense. I mean, we were speaking before we went live, Cash, and I was saying to you, I'm actually quite scared as things stand because, in my own ignorance, I have an autistic son, but that doesn't come into this consideration. But my autistic son is also an asthmatic son, and that is somebody who is in the vulnerable category. And I myself have asthma, and only copped a few days ago that puts me into the vulnerable group. And whilst I've been doing everything that I can. I mean, I've been totally self-isolating. I haven't left my house. Sabrina's the only one who's left my house over the past 2 weeks, and that was for a supermarket run and to lodge some money in the bank to cover bills, and that's the only time she's left the house. But I'm still petrified. My sleep has been broken. I can't get more than 2 hours consistent sleep without waking up, and I can only imagine what people who are really, really vulnerable, who maybe have just gone over cancer treatment, who has cystic fibrosis, which a friend of my wife's son has, and just think of these people. Just do what you're being asked. Just please fucking stay at home and do what you're being asked.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you say, there's a lot of fear for anyone who isn't in perfect health, because obviously this virus looks for people who are already vulnerable and makes them even more vulnerable. And like you say, it's just a case of it's just a case of common decency. It's just a case of doing the right thing, and it is just honestly a decision where I think people will show who they really are by the way that they act in this moment. And like you say, you were mentioning before the podcast that or before the stream, that you were scared yourself because of your underlying asthma, and I think that's fair enough. And I don't thankfully have any underlying conditions that would make me sort of scared in that respect. But am I going out and flouting the rules? No, I'm just adhering to them like every other person, because I'm not a wanker.
Do you know who Mr. Beast is, Cash, by any chance?
No, who is that?
He is a massive, massive, massive YouTuber who does tremendous amounts of good stuff. And Connor sent me a post from Mr. Beast earlier on, and I want to just say this man is an absolute legend and deserves every bit of success that he has. So, due to recent events, lots of people have started hoarding food and donating less, which sucks because now more people than ever need help. So he filled 6 semi-trucks with 1 million meals for people in need. And this is a young man in his probably early to mid-20s, Cash, in America. Massive YouTuber, planted over 1 million trees as well in the Amazon rainforest. He is just a goodwill ambassador for the world. And to see somebody of his age like that, with the social awareness that he has, I genuinely wish him every success in life, and I just want to give him a shout out. Not that he needs a shout out from me, but what a man. What a man.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always nice when you see someone with a level of fame and status and, let's be honest, money, doing the right things for the right reasons, because I think sometimes there is a perception that the richer you become, the more status you develop, you will you'll almost lose a bit of your soul. And it is in the case of Mr. Beast, it's just not the case. And I'd argue that it probably isn't incumbent on people that are YouTube stars or whatever to be the welfare that any country needs. But at the same time, it's really impressive that he's doing that, and it just goes to show that money doesn't corrupt all.
I would anybody who hasn't checked out his channel, have a look at it. Some of the stuff he's done over the years has been absolutely remarkable. But you're not here to hear me talk about Mr. Beast. Everybody, I'm sure, knows who he is. Cash, let's have a little chat about Mr. Werner, which is a bit more interesting to us as Liverpool fans. I'd seen something somewhere, again, my memory's not really recollecting where I'd seen it, but to basically tell Chelsea that it's very unlikely, because they've been linked to him as well, that they have much of a chance for Werner, because all the perception seems to be that if he is to leave RB Leipzig this summer, most likely it will be to Liverpool.
Yes, I mean, I do agree with that for all the reasons that, we've all spoken about previously, particularly you and I in the last stream, in terms of his suitability for the club, in terms of Klopp's desire to have him, in terms of the players' desire to come, all those things. There's only one thing that I would say in favour of Chelsea, and that would be he's more likely to be the immediate first choice there, because obviously I I don't know what people in the chat think, but I'm just not of the view that Tammy Abraham is really good enough to be the leading man at an elite level club. Certainly not by himself. So I actually think Timo Werner would come in and be an immediate and sizable step up on what they already have. So for that reason, that might turn his head. But then I also just think that the kid is clearly confident enough to essentially totally hold all the cards in terms of his RB Leipzig future. Like the reason that he signed that deal, the openness with which he talks about coming to Liverpool, and I think that shows a lot of traits that suggest to me that he wouldn't really be bothered about having to jostle for his place.
Yeah, there's so many positives about the idea of him coming here that I can't really see how or why wouldn't that happen. The money seems right for a player of his stature in the game. He is proven, he has European pedigree, he's international experience. He is somebody that I don't want to compare him to Roberto Firmino because they're different players, but I love his work ethic. I love what he does. I love his eye for goal, clearly, and the fact that he is the right age bracket as well for us to be looking to bring in. And look, everybody loves Divock Origi. Everybody holds Raheem Brewster I nearly said Raheem Brewster. I stumbled across my words there. Raheem Brewster in the highest of esteem, but it's probably more sensible to send Brewster out on loan next season to a Premier League club. And I think bringing Mr. Werner in, and of any transfer that's going to happen this summer, this is the one to me that I would be absolutely astonished if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like, I think the only thing that could potentially fuck with it is obviously what happens with this season and how it affects the transfer window in terms of its duration and so on. But there is no international football to contend with, so that actually frees up some time in theory to get moves done. What I'd say is you're right. I think it makes a lot of sense for Raheem Brewster, a player I really like, by the way, and I think a player by all accounts has gone down really well at Swansea. Like, they love him, they think he's great, think he's a good shithouse, good player obviously. So I actually think a year at a lower level Premier League club would be really, really good for Raheem, because I think it's so much harder to come in and make an impact in a team as a young player, as a forward player. That's just my own personal view. I think it's almost impossible for him to make any kind of impact that rivals or even resembles what Firmino can do, and we shouldn't expect that either. So, I would send him out on loan again, and look to bring in Werner, and then obviously, as we've spoken about previously, next summer perhaps would be the time for maybe Firmino to move on, only if he wants to and the money's right and all those things. I wouldn't be pushing him out the door by any stretch, but I think there is a broader expectation that not this summer but next summer the conventional front three we have now one of them will leave. So
I was just about to circle around to that very fact, and I want to kind of give you a two-folded question here. So firstly, Subi wants to know what you think about Glatzel's future, somebody who's obviously coming back from, I think it was an ACL that's kept him out for a long time, and I always thought that he was the better player between him and Bobby Duncan. Personally, I always thought that he was the more sharp of the two. I mean, Bobby Duncan, yes, he scored a shit ton of goals as well, but for me, Paul Glatzel was the one that stood out of those two as a more well-rounded player. But on that, you touched on, I want to get your thoughts on that firstly, but then after that I want to circle back around to what you said about one of the front three perhaps leaving. And it's a conversation that we've had many times on this stream between myself and the chat, myself and other people, and I was always of the mindset that if one of those three were to leave, it would most likely be Mo Salah. That was my guess in this scenario.
Yeah, and I'd share that view, to be fair, and I spoke about on the previous stream why. I'll just summarise it quickly to say that I think of the three, incredibly talented player, but potentially, and I actually don't even think potentially, I think definitely has the least level of affinity with the club, I think. It doesn't mean he dislikes the club by any stretch, but I think Mo Salah is very much his own brand. He's very much his own franchise, and he will go where the market demand suggests would be good for that brand, and I think that would, he'd go with our best wishes, but it's I think that appears quite likely to me. So the timing of what you've mentioned, bring Werner in this summer, have almost like a 4-pronged attack for next year, one of the front three leave, and then adapt like that with Raheem Brewster coming back from potentially a second loan. So I actually think Klopp will probably be thinking that far ahead, and that would be a good strategy. And then obviously Paul Glatzel, I think a lot will be determined by how he recovers from this very serious injury. You're right to say that he is definitely the better player out of him and Bobby Duncan, and evidently the better person with the better agent also. And I think you're in a position now where a lot will be determined by how he recovers from that injury. But a loan to potentially even a League One club, lower level championship, feels inevitable for him.
Joanne, it's definitely not my door. A lot of people in the chat are asking, is it my door that's creaking or is it your door? It isn't mine. I can promise you that one.
It is mine. I can go and just adjust it here very quickly. I think it's
while on that, let me just say that Casper reckons Firmino is the more likely to leave. Dave Sweeney reckons that Sadio Mane is the more likely to leave. And we've had these conversations before. It is difficult, and nobody wants any of them to leave. Let's put that out there. We all love the three guys that are here at the minute. But, football is a business. And like you've said, Cash, along the same lines of thinking as yourself, for me, I always thought that Mohamed Salah looks like the player who wants to tick a few more boxes off. So he's done it. Yeah. He's done the Premier League, and maybe he wants to get that big move to Spain and increase. And like when you say brand, maybe we think about this in a negative way, but Mohamed Salah is a wonderful ambassador for both obviously his religion and his country and African football as a whole, and that that needs to be taken into account because he is raising the profile of that entire region.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I in no way want to portray the idea that I think him being his own brand is a bad thing. I think it's only a bad thing if he starts disrupting the club with the desire to basically advance his own brand, and he's never done that. So, you look at examples like, let's say, for example, Raheem Sterling is maybe a less severe example, but he certainly disrupted the chemistry of the club because he was angling for a big money move to build his own brand. And I think Raheem Sterling, I listened to an interview he did with GQ, and he speaks really well, actually, but I always get the sense that he is very much loyal to whatever entity or corporation is adding to his brand. So I think he angled at the time for a move that disrupted the club, the harmony, and it sullied his reputation in my eyes. But I think Mohamed Salah would never do that. And I think his desire to build his own brand is totally fair-minded. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I think, like you say, he is a player, and you actually articulated it really well. He's just a player that I think wants to tick more things, more boxes. And Spain would be the obvious one for him. And I just sense that he's almost like a bit irrepressible as a footballer, in the sense that it took him a while to get to the point where he was really considered world class. Even before he came to us, he wasn't considered world class by any stretch. Look at the money we paid for him. So I think now that he's at that level, he would like to test himself as a player of that status in Spain. That's my view. Whereas I've always felt like Roberto Firmino is just very content with the level that he's at. He doesn't strike me as a player that really craves more, not in a bad sense, but he doesn't strike me as a player that would ever knock on your door and ask for a move. Doesn't really strike me as that type. And I think Sadio Mane is one of those players that I could conceivably see staying with us until the latter stages of his career. Seems incredibly content, has a manager that brings out the best in him, doesn't seem to be losing any of the attributes that make him incredible, and he just doesn't strike me as a player that would want to leave either. So, yeah.
Couple more bullshit rumours that I've seen doing the rounds, and I want to kind of get into this in more detail, and that is Felipe Coutinho and Ousmane Dembele. And look, I want to put these to bed straight away by putting it out there that it is no secret Barcelona are beyond desperate to try and move both of these guys on. Coutinho went on loan with a 2-year option to buy to Bayern Munich, who seem to have no intention of making that a permanent deal. There's been stuff coming out linking Felipe Coutinho with a move back to the Premier League. Apparently he's furious at Daniel Levy at Spurs for some reason. I don't know if it was a move that potentially fell through in the past, but like, make no secret about it, you're going to see these players linked to everybody and sundry because Barcelona are desperate to bring cash back in for these players. Yeah. And I don't mean this cash, I mean Reddy's.
Wonga. Yeah, look, I mean, name me a club that has done worse transfer business than Barcelona in the recent years, and I will eat my hat. Like, they have done absolutely atrocious business. Look, I mean, I wouldn't take Coutinho back now if he paid me. Only, not because I hate him or anything, but I just think we've outgrown him, and that's an irony, isn't it? Because he left because he'd outgrown us in inverted commas, but actually the club and the direction of the team has totally outgrown him. He is a very good player, but I've said it before on this stream and I'll say it again. He is a player without an elite mentality, which basically means to me he's a player that needs the environment to be totally geared around him and the personnel to be totally geared around him in order to get the best out of him. He's not a player that I think has an elite level mentality, and that unfortunately for him has been revealed at Barcelona on one of the world's most unforgiving stages. And I also just think that and the same thing has replicated itself at Bayern Munich. And honestly, until he goes to a club where he is the biggest fish in a slightly smaller pond, he will have the same problem. And I'd actually argue that if he was to come back to Liverpool now, he wouldn't get in our team. He wouldn't. So
Interesting.
so that one, he wouldn't get in our best 11. Not a chance. So for me, I think with that player, I feel sorry for him because I think on a personal level, he took a risk, and it totally has spectacularly backfired. And Barcelona have really treated him pretty badly in terms of the way they've hung him out to dry. Dembele's a slightly different type of player in terms of his issues, injuries, ill-discipline. But I think Coutinho took a risk that his mentality didn't really allow him to take. And then the fallout has been that he basically has ended up with egg on his face and being touted around for a move here, there, and everywhere. Clubs won't be able to perhaps pay his wages. He'll have to take a wage drop, which he doesn't want to do. And, he's only 27, but, that'll very quickly turn to 30. And then he'll be looking back and thinking, God, that was a really good 5 years I had. And I shouldn't have ruined it.
I have absolutely no sympathy for Coutinho, but I will say this: he has been massively mismanaged. I mean, Barcelona brought him in and have not played him in his most effective position. I mean, statistically, I believe his most effective position has been in off that left hand side. But for me, when I heard that they were signing him, I thought, oh, Iniesta replacement straight away.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I can only, I suppose, comment in terms of what I think of him as a player. But you're right to say that it's not just about him and his potential shortcomings as an elite level footballer. It is about the management, and he doesn't have control over that. I think he probably went in, pardon me, to Barcelona, I should say, on the promise that he would be Iniesta's kind of like heir to the throne, and it just hasn't happened for him. And he hasn't been given the time that he would have been given at Liverpool, which he was given to get going at the club, if people can remember. And he doesn't do well in unforgiving environments. He does well in nurturing environments. And the reality is he has been really, really badly mismanaged, and he's been badly kind of hung out to dry. And I imagine him to be a player that's really fragile in terms of his confidence. And once you lose that, it's very difficult to get it back.
Absolutely. I mean, you see on the Jurgen Klopp with an arm around his shoulder, and I suppose probably the same from Rodgers. He started to thrive. At Espanyol as well, former Spurs manager there at the time, again an arm around the shoulder situation. He wasn't getting the love at Inter Milan, and he certainly isn't getting the love at Barcelona, and even at Bayern Munich. When he went there originally, he was being left out, but then had started to be introduced. Yeah. But I want to just go back to Dembele, because I have to be honest, he intrigues me. I know that the rumours are bullshit, there's no way we're going to pay that money, but as a player, if you can get him right, if you can get his head right, and as you said, get those injuries behind him, there is a player there for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think anyone's denying the talent and the ability, but I would question the hunger. If you let's get it right. Objectively speaking, Barcelona is one of the biggest clubs in the world, not bigger than us, but one of the biggest. And I would say that to get your move there and to essentially almost jeopardize it through your own actions, I don't really get that. I really don't understand why you would even try to do that. I mean, like, for all Coutinho's feelings of Barcelona, there's never any indication that he's given anything other than 100%. Whereas with Dembele, you get this amazing opportunity, and you don't appreciate it to its full extent. I don't understand that. But perhaps, as you said, it's a psychological thing that could be worked on. And I think if anybody could do it, it is Jurgen Klopp. But whether you would want whether you would want to invest that amount of time and money in a player that may not pay dividends for you, is up for debate. But you're right, he is an excellent player. There's no denying that. But I'd perhaps be more worried by the injury record than I would be by the disciplinary record. I think that the latter could be worked with, but injuries are very difficult.
Yeah, that's a fair show. I mean, Barcelona seem to be in a little bit of a mess at them, and even now there's talk of players again taking a hit on wages and stuff like that. And we're talking about like, this isn't a championship club. This isn't a second division Spanish club. This is a club that, along with Real Madrid, get more than the lion's share of the television money in La Liga, and it just shows there's been massive mismanagement at Barcelona to leave them in this position. And we're speaking about Coutinho and Dembele. Well, who the fuck thought it was a good idea to sign Antoine Griezmann? I will never understand.
Well, I think that was just a bit of a dick measuring contest, wasn't it? Really, like I think that was very much to I think that was very much to be like, well, we can go in and take Atletico Madrid's best player. And I actually think there was so little class about the way that move was done, and it really made me dislike Antoine Griezmann. It really made me think like, you're a total wanker. Because remember he released that video the summer before last, being like, I'm staying,
He
and then he
made two.
basically he made two, and then he just basically, it was very, very clear he was signing for Barcelona, and he didn't even try to make any attempt to hide it. And yeah, it lacked class. And as I say, it's they've kind of gotten what they deserve with that one, because they bought that player for 109 million when they clearly didn't have the money, and he's 28, 29. So it's like that's what I mean. Like it's just really bad. It's a really bad transfer policy. I don't know who's devising it. I don't know who thinks it's a good idea, but it really is atrocious, and it's going to result in them not winning another, Champions League while they still have the best player to ever have played the game in their ranks. And it's it's disappointing from their perspective, but also hilarious from ours.
Yeah, I will agree on that, absolutely. And look, I've made no secret of the fact that Barcelona would always be my second team. They're the first football shirt I've ever had, but I mean, it is atrocious what's going on there. It really is. And they're getting what they deserve. I mean, even looking back to the Coutinho transfer, I mean, I believe he had to sacrifice a chunk of money himself to even make that get over the line, if my memory serves me correct.
Yeah, he had to pay part of the release fee, didn't he? Like, I think it was like £11 million or something ridiculous. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was definitely in the upper sort of toward 10 million at least. So it's clearly that also evidences how desperate he was for that move to happen. And I don't necessarily blame him for having that desperation. I think he was in a sense sold a dream, and it hasn't worked out. But I think he should have had the strength to realize way that he was sold. It was very much just to make this statement because they had money burning a hole in their pocket, and they really wanted to just make a play and make it clear that they were still the biggest players in the game. And Coutinho was a willing victim to that.
We've seen a lot of links as well for Liverpool to an attacking midfielder, or maybe somebody to play in the hole behind the front three. The two standout names for me are Houssem Ouar, and I hate to pronounce that guy's name, and Kai Havertz. Is there anybody else for you that you'd like to see perhaps Liverpool look at in that position, or do you think we even need somebody to play in that position, with obviously having Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Takumi Minamino, who can play in the hole and behind as well, and of course Naby Keita, who seems to be the forgotten man at this moment in time?
I mean, I personally, as I said in the last stream, I wouldn't prioritise that area. I think if something really ridiculously attractive becomes possible, then yes, definitely go for it. But I wouldn't be putting all my eggs in the Kai Havertz or Noir basket. It's I wouldn't say that it would be a luxury, but certainly it's not our greatest need, and I would prioritise other positions on the pitch. And again, I think next summer is arguably going to be more decisive in respect of those type of big signings. That summer where we signed, obviously, Fabinho, Alisson, Keita came in, and Shaqiri. I think next summer might be one of those summers, but I think this summer will be more tweaks.
Somebody, Ian Greenstreet, said we need a reserve keeper for Alisson, and I had seen, I think it was Paul Gorst of the Echo doing the Q&A where he said he believes that Adrian is going to still be here in the summer. What's your take on that?
I mean, if he's still... Oh, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because... Sorry, excuse me, just coughed. It's a difficult one because I think on one hand, Adrian, I work with quite a few West Ham fans. I work in East London, and they say that the Adrian that we're getting is exactly the Adrian that existed at West Ham, capable of brilliance, but also capable of horrendous mistakes. And for all the goodwill that he's built up and all the credit, and rightly so, and fair play to him, and clearly has very much bought into the ethos and spirit of the club, which is good. For all that, there are real gaps in terms of his consistent quality, and it's about what kind of reserve goalkeeper you want for the best team in the world. So if he's still here in the summer, I wouldn't be overly bothered, but I would say you really got to pull your finger out and eradicate those mistakes from your game. I mean, for all that Man United are a vastly inferior outfit to us in all departments, more or less, at the moment, the one thing that I would say they have over us is they have a very good backup keeper in Sergio Romero, and Dean Henderson out on loan as well. So you look at that as a situation, and it is possible to have two elite level keepers at a club, and perhaps we would need to look at that, but I wouldn't be saying kick Adrian out of the club.
I just want to comment on something in the chat. Gabrielle said, I don't blame Coutinho, we were dying at the time. We absolutely weren't, mate. We were just off the back of a Europa League final, and we were on the way to a Champions League final. A guy called Gabriel in the chat said he doesn't blame Coutinho for leaving. We were dying. Far from it, mate. We were building at that moment in time, and maybe Coutinho thought that the building process might take a bit longer than he was willing to give it, but the comment that you've made there is just incorrect. I mean, Europa League final, then, on the way to another Champions League final, improvement season after season with Klopp. We were on the up.
We were on the precipice. We were on the brink of getting to that really elite level, and you talk about, you mentioned there, Craig, about him, the rebuilding process didn't have enough, or may have taken longer than he was willing to give. He was there for 4.5 years prior to leaving. If he was really that bothered about the length of the rebuilding process, he would have left long before, when we were way worse. So I actually think the real thing was that a team he really wanted to play for came in and really made a play for him, and he agitated way too much to go. And that's it. And I don't think it reflects on our quality at that time, because actually when he left, we were the best version of ourselves than we'd been in any period that he was at the club, even including the near title run with Brendan Rodgers. That team that Felipe Coutinho left was the best version of any Liverpool team he'd been in. So that comment, with all due respect, is a lie.
I want to get round to somebody who people don't like me bringing up because his name isn't really sexy enough. But you know what? I've a lot of time for Todd Cantwell, and I'm going to monitor this guy's career.
I like Todd Cantwell as well.
I've seen us linked with him. James Pearce has said that yes, we've scouted him, but he might not be an immediate priority. But you know what, Cash? It's okay going out there and signing the Timo Werners of this world, and that is absolutely great. But Todd Cantwell's a player.
He's very good, isn't he? I agree with you. I don't think it's unfashionable. Maybe his name's a bit unfashionable, but I actually think I quite enjoy looking at his Instagram on occasion. He thinks he's a bit of a flyboy. He thinks he's a bit of a player, I think. But he actually, for me, is he's a little bit potentially lightweight. That's the only thing I can think that would preclude us from going for him. But then also he could be put onto a very good strength and conditioning program and everything. But what I would say is that if he was, I mean, they're not the same player in any way, shape or form, but if you profile him and Minamino, there are similar attributes between the two players. They play for arguably clubs of a similar size and ambition level. Perhaps Salzburg have more ambition than Norwich, but I'll just pursue with the argument. I actually think he would, if he was available for the kind of money that we got Minamino for, I'd be biting your hand off, but he won't be. He'll cost a premium, particularly if Norwich go down. Particularly if they stay up, which is unlikely, and even if they go down, he'll still attract a premium. So unfortunately, I don't think it's a player that we will realistically go for, but I do like him. I could see him going to Leicester.
Gabriel has come back and said Alberto Moreno and Karius are not good enough for a European giant. Mate, need I remind you of the fucking fraud Barcelona just after going out and buying from a relegation fodder club somebody who didn't make it in England. I can't even think of his name. What's his name?
Martin Braithwaite.
Yeah, Braithwaite. Now, you're telling me that Moreno and Karius aren't good enough for European giant, and I agree with you, but you tell me that Braithwaite is good enough to play up alongside Lionel Messi at Barcelona? I mean, do you know what I mean? Every club, mate, does have some players that are squad players and players that we might not all agree are the right ones, but I mean, I could go through that Barcelona team and probably name me 3 or 4 players that don't deserve to be wearing that shirt. So again, look, it's all just opinions and we're not always going to agree. Cash, the left back spot, I think we're all happy enough that as things stand, either Neco Williams or maybe Kylian Hoover can come in and challenge or at least back up Trent in that right back position moving forward. But left back for me, I've laid my cards on the table. Saka at Arsenal, his contract is running down. They're going to want to re-sign him up. I'd love to see us make a move for that kid.
He's very good, isn't he? But he's not a left back. He doesn't want to be a left back, so that is problematic.
He's a winger apparently, is he? But like,
he's a winger.
Well, we use basically auxiliary wingers anyway, don't we?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, isn't it? Because I think Arsenal will be absolutely desperate to sign him up, and rightly so. And I actually think under Mikel Arteta, I actually think they will, they will absolutely be better at these kinds of things than they have been previously. They'll be better at, I suppose, they'll be better at signing people to new contracts. They will be better at keeping the players they've got, and yeah, so it's very much hopeful by, I would say, also because he's got an emotional connection with Arsenal. He's from the area. I would say if they put new terms on the table, he'll sign them, but he is a very, very good player. He
is, and another one at Arsenal who seems to be causing a bit of a headache, of course, is Aubameyang, he's got 1 year left at the end of this season on his contract, and I can smell another Mesut Ozil type situation brewing there.
Yeah, because I mean, I think Arsenal really don't have any ability to, sort of to a comfortable, acceptable position. They either, sorry, I just have something in my throat. They either do a Mesut Ozil and they basically give the player such a ridiculously lucrative contract that he will never leave the club and no club will ever be able to afford him on his current wages, or they let them leave like Aaron Ramsey for nothing. So they really need to decide, and I think recalibrate who they are as a club. What kind of club are they? What kind of business do they do? And at the moment, it does fall into one of those two extremes. And actually, what I would like to see is, well, I wouldn't like to see, I'm not an Arsenal fan, but there would need to be, with Aubameyang, you'd like to think that there would be lessons learned. But also, I wouldn't be entirely in disagreement if they tried to sell him this summer, only on the basis of the length of his contract left and his age. But I guess it'll depend on what he angles for. He seems quite content. He's the captain of the club, seems to get on well with everyone. And perhaps that there will be able to reach a solution, but there's no doubt about it, Arsenal are pretty incompetent when it comes to these things normally.
I think they should give him the money, to be fair. I mean, he's a proven goal scorer. I think they should give him the money and just fucking try and get rid of Ozil if possible. Content said, what about Jamal Lewis, another promising young left back?
Yeah, he's really good, and he's from Northern Ireland as well. Well, he plays for Northern Ireland. He's not from Northern Ireland, but he I remember he scored that really, really good goal against Leicester. That they won that game, didn't they? That was a really good goal. I mean, I've only seen him play a few times, and he does look very efficient, and he looks very competent. And he perhaps isn't, I mean, that was probably his first senior goal, so perhaps he isn't as daring in an attacking sense as he needs to be in an elite level team. But I'm always of the view that any player who's been coached by Daniel Farke could quite easily transition into a team coached by Klopp and Pep Linders, and I'd stand by that. But again, it all depends on what the club obviously decide to do. But I mean, certainly a left back is a priority, I would suggest. And Jamal Lewis would fit the bill in terms of a player who would happily be back up to Andy Robertson, because that's what the player would be coming in to be. So
and Klopp has made no secret of the fact either that he is a massive admirer of Daniel Farke as a coach.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Farke is a really, really good coach, and a lot of people have said this, and I'm sure it'll be no comfort to Norwich fans, but they're the best bottom place team in the Premier League, like ever. in the sense that I've seen them play a number of times and think like, God, you're a very good team, but you just make too many mistakes, which sounds strange because like it sounds like they're mutually exclusive, but actually they have all the ingredients to be a really, really good team, but they arguably, well, they have made a lot of defensive mistakes this season, but that part of that has been because they haven't had a decisive central defensive partnership because Grant Hanley has been injured a lot, along with Ben Godfrey, and actually, what I think is that they also lack quality in the final third because Timo Pukki is a very good player, but he's had moments, but he doesn't look consistently like he's going to bang in 20 goals at Premier League level, which is fine. But they lack anything beyond him. So if you take those two factors out, particularly the offensive element, they're a really good team. They're really well coached, and their players are very good technicians. So that an individual player in a bad team or a low level team like Norwich in the Premier League could actually be taken and integrated into a better team because they've got the technical skill set to make the change.
I love that you went full on Brendan Rodgers there, by the way. Wonderful technicians.
Oh, wonderful technicians. I've got their names in little envelopes. I'm going to tell you who's going to come to Liverpool. No, I'm joking.
You've even got the accent as well, which makes it even more Rodgers-esque. Look, I've got 3 more things that I want to talk to you about real quickly. They're all about transfer renewals. But before I do that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you guys a heads up about what's coming up over the next week or so on the channel. So I'm going to take the weekend off because, we're all just trying to get some rest as well during this period. And Monday, I'm going to have Boya on for a chat, which is really good. I'm looking forward to having Anthony on and getting to chat with him about Leicester City, of course, and the transfer window. Wednesday, Terry from the Football Terrace is going to come on. Obviously, I was over on his channel recently, and look, we know what happened over there. Nothing with Terry, by the way, but we know what happened. So I'm looking forward to having Terry on, getting a Manchester United perspective on the season ahead, the transfer window as well. On Friday, we're going to do that watch-along of Istanbul that we promised you guys. So we're going to do that on Friday, evening time around 9 o'clock, but I'll have more information on that over the coming days. So again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week, we've got Boya, Terry from the Football Terrace, and then of course we'll do that watch along of Istanbul as well, which is the only game I want to do if I'm looking back on past games. Cash, 3 transfer renewals or 3 contract renewals that have been mentioned a lot recently. Obviously Gini Wijnaldum is one that we know about, but there's something came out in recent days to say that Alisson Becker and Virgil van Dijk's contracts have been looked at being renewed as well. I can think that could only be to financially reward them for a job well done.
Yeah, and I think it would be richly deserved. I always think it's quite funny to be like, this player that earns 200 grand a week really needs more money. But actually, in the case of those 2 players, they are the 2 players, let's get it right, that they have made us the team that we are in terms of that feeling of invincibility. You only have to look at what Van Dijk has done to the defence, no matter the partner that he has. You only have to look at what happens when Alisson isn't in the team, like in the Champions League this year, to realise how significant both players are. And I think it's one of those instances where I say whatever they want, just give it to them, because you're going to have those players, theoretically for at least 2 or 3 more years on better terms. But imagine the trophy haul that you could get in that time with those players at their peak. Well, perhaps Alisson would be coming toward his peak. He's a keeper, but Virgil van Dijk as peak, you'd be getting the best years of Virgil van Dijk, deserved Ballon d'Or winner that didn't win the Ballon d'Or. You'd be getting some of the best years of the best keeper in the world. And I think whatever they want, just give it to them. And I think it would also send out a really, really strong message that this isn't just a Liverpool team that are going to win the Champions League and the Premier League. Although I say just, it's a team that are looking to build a 3, 4, 5 year dynasty. And I think that message, particularly now, is very important. So I'd like to see that happen a lot.
Quick answer to Benjamin to ask me, would I swap Alisson for Oblak? No. And
Nope.
if you go back and look at the time where we were looking at a goalkeeper, I was banging the Alisson drum big time. I was one of the earlier people who were calling for Alisson Becker, because Jan Oblak is a wonderful goalkeeper. Do not get me wrong, deserves to be mentioned with the best in the world right now, probably in the top 3. But it's horses for courses. I keep saying this. What Manchester City did when they went out and got Ederson is got a goalkeeper that perfectly suits the way that Pep Guardiola is looking to play.
Yes.
Oblak is perfect for Atleti and their deep lying defence. His shot stopping is magnificent. His presence is magnificent. But he does not have the distribution abilities that Alisson Becker has, which is what we need, Cash. We need that sweeper keeper.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, like, I mean, I, not to, it's not intended to be rude, this comment, but I don't really get this whole thing where people are like, you've got the best keeper in the world, but would you swap him from this other best keeper in the world? I mean, I personally wouldn't. And I think the reasons are for all the reasons that you've outlined, Craig. It's, we've got the best keeper in the world. We don't need to really be thinking about a player that might have slightly better shot stopping ability because, let's get it right. If we swap the two keepers in that Champions League game, Liverpool batter them 5-0. And if we have our keeper and they have their keeper, Liverpool probably beat them 2-0 because All Black will have kept out 3 goals. So it's two players at the absolute peak of their powers that both play for really good clubs. We've got one, they've got the other. I love our one, they love their one, and I would just leave it as that.
While we're on keepers, actually, Subi wants to know, what about Camille Grabara? What do you think about his future?
Well, to my knowledge, he get a quite not a serious injury, but he was injured at Huddersfield, wasn't he? But by all accounts, he was doing very, very well there. But then he got an injury. I mean, I don't, I don't scout him, I don't profile him, but from what I'd read, he was doing well. But it's hard to say what you do after Alisson because there will come a point where Alisson leaves, and that's fine. And Liverpool have had problems with goalkeepers pretty notoriously since Pepe Reina left. And um, would someone like Grabara or Queeveen Kelleher be ready? Only time will tell. Certainly, Queeveen Kelleher needs one, two loans, but it would really depend on where we are as a club. But certainly, he is a player that showed a lot of promise and by all accounts was doing very well at Huddersfield.
Elijah John 5 has said, I missed the start of the show. I'd like your opinion and thoughts on whether the league will be concluded. Myself and Cash have both said, mate, that we think it is more likely than not that it will be concluded, and that is the far more sensible option than the potential of lawsuits all over the shop, which could well be the case. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring the stream to a close. Let me say thank you as always to Cash, and Cash, stay on the line there for a second. I want to have a quick chat with you afterwards, if that's okay.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah,
and of course, thank you to all our viewers and subscribers, and most importantly, look, do hit that subscribe button, drop a like on the stream, but most importantly, from both myself and Cash and everyone associated with the channel, look after yourselves. Make sure that you adhere to everything that you're being asked to do. Take care of your families. I always say that in the streams, but there's no more truer time to say this than now. And try and stay healthy, try and keep occupied, try and keep in contact with people. We're built, Cash, as humans to want that interaction, and it is very difficult sometimes when we're being told to isolate, but it will impact a lot of people's mental health. So try and reach out to somebody, have a chat, and just, I suppose, as we said earlier on, maybe set small goals, Cash, and just try and get through it one day at a time.
Yeah, no, exactly. I would totally echo what you've said. There's nothing I would change about it. I think you said it perfectly, Craig. I think just keep doing what you're doing in terms of looking after yourself, looking after the people around you, or reach out to someone who isn't around you but who may need something, or need a word or need a friendly ear. And I guess maybe it is just a time to become more aware of all the people and things that we touch in terms of not like our family or our friends, but all the interactions that you think are pretty trivial but actually may mean a lot to the person that you interact with. And certainly I've become very aware in terms of my role as a journalist. I speak with a lot of people who, particularly now, but also before, are just inherently vulnerable. People speak to, the local press and speak to me about their lives and their issues. And I get that sense that, people, I wouldn't say rely on my opinion, but they trust me to be a good person when I speak with them and I interact with them, and I've become very aware of that, I think, because of what's going on. And I guess it's just a time for us all to be a little bit more aware of all the people that are around us and our potential impact on them.
Absolutely. And again, thank you everybody for watching. Enjoy your weekend, and we will be back with you on Monday. Lots of love to you all.
Bye. Thank you.